and rebirth in endless rounds of procreation. In shock from the trauma of awakening, the planet is bleak, arid, uninhabitable. But a new arrival will transform the scene. In alchemical union with the four genie of creation, air, fire, water, and earth, plants turn the desert into a garden. Absorbing light from the sun and nourishment from the waters, sprouting plants, through billions of tiny lips, give forth oxygen to purify the air and invigorate the earth. Spreading across the planet, a matrix of green, allowing all life to flourish.
dawn of human creation, we have looked to plants to nourish us with their flesh, shelter us with their fiber, and enrich our world with their beauty.
Plants, yielding themselves to man, share in his spiritual flowering. The elements of my body are as one with the infinite cycle of creation and all matter in the universe. Chanting the Vedic hymns of creation, devout Hindus reaffirm each day their belief in the unity of all existence. A teeming industrial port located on the Hooghly River, Calcutta gives little indication of the cultural glory that crowns its recent past. Less than half a century ago, learned men from many nations came to a quiet suburban street to visit an institute founded by the great Indian scientist Sir Jagadish Chandra Bose. Inside, unique machines monitor the delicate living responses of plants in a section of the institute dedicated to the works of its founder.
These are special instruments that Bose invented for making studies of the minute movements in plants. During the last years of his life, he was fascinated by the mysteries of plant life. We are fortunate that besides all that he wrote, in his later life, he made many recordings in his own voice in this machine.
It was from those who till the ground and make the land blossom with green bounty that I do my love of nature.
Traveling to England, Bose presented his latest and most significant discoveries in person before a gathering of the most distinguished minds in the scientific world, 324 fellows of London's Royal Society. In the same hall where Darwin, Huxley, and Faraday made history, the learned gathering listened with polite interest as the obscure Indian scientist described his pioneering measurements of radio waves. Through his experiments, Bose also discovered that both metals and living animal tissue respond in a similar way to the effects of radiation. He postulated, if the continuity exists between such extremes as metal and animal tissue, similar effects should be present in the plant kingdom. Touching the leaves of Mimosa pudica with a cotton soaked in ether, Bose demonstrates the fainting response in a plant. The object of his future experiments was to prove through the design and use of highly specialized machines that all the characteristic responses exhibited by animal tissue are also to be found in plants. But Bowe's experiments were denied publication by the Royal Society. By daring to suggest that electrical responses are present in plants, he had offended the learned members. Meanwhile in America, George Washington Carver, another generous soul, will revolutionize agriculture. A poor black born into slavery, he will generate great wealth for his compatriots by revitalizing their ravaged soil, a gift for which he is scorned because of his communion with the fairyland of plants. A natural alchemist, Carver transmutes the lowly peanut from hog food into a score of products, all highly profitable. But like Bowes, Carver refuses to patent his inventions. Neither genius will charge for helping to produce bounty from the earth. Advanced philosophers, neither is appreciated in his lifetime.
Born to open for mankind nature's door, a life known by a few, and those who knew that shared their knowledge fewer cared about what plants could do. For most felt it was mad to conceive that plants thought, felt, and moved quite like we. But with instruments both would devise, would take science itself by surprise. So on we go, where who knows, to a place where there's still non-believers. What will it take, for heaven's sake, for those who find what's real too hard to believe in? It's that same old story again. Born of slaves who died too soon to realize the need his life would be. Selflessly he gave his wisdom to a way where first no minds would see. He said if farmland was to be rich, we must plant crops to replenish it. But it took him persuasion and test to convince them Carver's way was best. So on we go, to where who knows, to a place where there's still non-believers. What will it take, for heaven's sake, for those who find what's real too hard to believe in? It's that same old story of, yeah.
It was in the actions of the plants that I perceived a prevailing unity that is within all things. The mote that quivers in ripples of light, the teeming life upon the earth, and the radiant suns that shine above us. I understood for the first time that ancient message proclaimed by my ancestors on the banks of the Ganges 30 centuries ago. They who see but one in all the teeming manifoldness of the universe, unto them alone belongs eternal truth, unto no one else.
After 5 decades of obscurity, the legacy of Jagadish Chandra Bose is now revived in San Diego, California.
Welcome to the Baxter School of Lie Detection. I'm Cleve Baxter, and during the next 6 weeks here in San Diego, you're going to be involved in a very intensified instructional course in the use of the polygraph, or so-called lie detector.
In the course of a career dedicated to investigation for federal and municipal law enforcement agencies, Cleve Baxter has earned a reputation as the world's foremost authority on the polygraph.
Well, as of February 2nd, 1966, I'd been in the polygraph field full-time for 18 years. And this particular morning, I had been working all night in the laboratory and had decided to water a plant in the lab, very similar to the plant here, Dracaena cane plant. My thought was that as the moisture arrived to the leaf of the plant, the plant should be a better conductor, and I should get a reading on the chart. Well, strangely enough, I didn't get this at all, and in fact, it did just the opposite. Instead of the tracing edging upward as it should have on the chart, it went into sort of a wild excitation, very similar to the first part of a human taking a polygraph test. But then it occurred to me, just about 14 minutes along, what would be the real optimum threat to the well-being of a plant. In fact, the imagery of fire entered my mind, and I not only thought, but I fully intended to burn the very leaf that was being tested with a match. Now, I had no matches in the room at the time, and I don't smoke, and I had to go next door to my secretary's area to get a match. But the interesting thing is that right at the split second that imagery of fire entered my mind, the tracing reflecting the changes in the plant just went right off the top of the page. And the only thing that occurred at that time, no lighting of a match, nothing else, merely the imagery of fire. And I must say that as of 14 minutes along in that initial observation on the morning of February 2nd, 1966, my life just hasn't been the same.
Responding to the initial experience, when a plant apparently read his mind, Baxter works nights on his own in his small laboratory. His goal is to perfect an experiment that will satisfy the rigid criteria of the scientific establishment. Baxter hopes to show that plants react to any termination of life in their immediate environment. During the next 6 hours, at some undetermined moment chosen by a randomizer, these brine shrimp will fall to their deaths in boiling water. By totally automating his equipment, Baxter is determined to eliminate human influence. In another room, completely separate from his laboratory, Baxter has placed a philodendron plant, a polygraph, and a videotape recorder. Carefully, he places a leaf between a pair of electrodes that will monitor the electrical activity of the plant. As he has done during countless police interrogations, Baxter establishes a baseline on his polygraph to get an accurate recording of the reaction of his subjects. The video recorder will tape the details of the experiment in Baxter's absence.
For the automation of this experiment to be successful, I have to get a certain distance away from my lab so that my consciousness won't affect the results. I hadn't previously experienced any direct or indirect exposure to mystical philosophies. My contacts had been well within the establishment, particularly federal government agencies and law enforcement. Before working with plants, I hadn't really thought much about the idea of greater consciousness or awareness. Now I look around, but what I see has a different meaning.
The California dawn often finds Cleve Baxter still at work in a small room behind his laboratory. The results of each night's work must be carefully analyzed and recorded. In spite of his high percentage of successful results, only a few daring individuals from the scientific establishment have come forward with offers to replicate his experiments or test his results. The great majority are content simply to condemn his efforts without taking the trouble to investigate their validity.
A few brine shrimp die and a plant feels their death. I think it's the smallness of the event that makes it so significant. It means that even on the lower levels of life, there's a profound consciousness or an awareness that binds all things together.
Is it coincidence that a plant will grow its petals into an exact replica of a female bee, so alluring to the male bee that he attempts to mate with the petal, and in so doing, pollinates the orchid? In the plant world, there are more than 500 varieties of flesh eaters, ingesting with mouth and stomach anything from hornets to hamburger, using endless cunning, from tentacles to sticky hairs to appetizing aromas or subtle traps with which to capture their prey.
Hello, flower. Or you look tipsy, and you don't just have a couple of dips. Right.
At the University of California, Hayward, across the bay from San Francisco, research is presently being conducted on the electrical potential of plants.
And then I try to compare those signals to emotional changes in a human. In other words, we take a person and we sit him away from the plant, and he goes through
Randy
emotional
Fonts,
changes.
a researcher in parapsychology, proposes an experiment inspired by Cleve Baxter's initial experience.
Would this constitute a tight, sound scientific experiment?
Dr. Norman Goldstein, a professor of biology and expert in the new science of electrophysiology, agrees to review the results of the experiment, which will determine whether the plant Mimosa pudica actually responds to human emotions.
As you can see, we have the normal copper screen and such as that Faraday cage, block out electromagnetic signals, radiations. But in addition to that, we have a plexiglass over here that blocks the wind movements and ion movements and air flows that would, shake the plant, cause abnormal signals. We also have a motion detector in here, which will allow us to look and see whether any external motions or movements have interfered with the experiment, so we can tell when the plant is actually vibrated.
Where's the subject with respect to the cage now?
We're going to seat him, within a few feet of the cage, probably about 5 feet. And he'll be viewing a screen, he'll be watching a stimulus movie that we're providing. Mm-hmm. And then his emotional responses should carry over into the cage here and affect the plant. That's what we're hoping for.
We're going to be measuring your galvanic skin response, which means your emotional activity.
Okay. Let's hope there is some.
Is that too tight?
No, that's great.
Okay. This is going to measure your blood volume. And this will measure the muscle tension in your forehead, or the EMG.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Good.
Got that one. He's doing real well with that image.
That looks very convincing. I have to think about that one. Well, let's say that the experiment is quite well done.
Yeah.
Then you're claiming that the individual's response is producing some kind of energy display. When you're finished analyzing your data and it supports your contentions, you can imagine what importance this will be. You can imagine it'll change our whole picture of how we relate to plants, that we're interacting with them all the time.
Plants react to man-made music. Do humans react to music produced by plants?
In the belief that a tangible expression of plant emotions would bring about a harmonious interaction between human beings and the plant kingdom, artist John Lifton devised what he calls green music. Plants have been wired into a complex computer. Their change of mood as they react to the crowds of visitors will be converted into musical expression.
I'll check that other electrode placement. Okay, Richard.
As the people move among the plants, the sounds they hear are the plants reacting to their presence. An ephemeral exchange of energy, linking two diverse life forms, becomes a symphony of emotions.
Come on now, look at the fern. It's right over there. Now be careful, be very careful. Nice to work. Oh, there's the prettiest tree.
During recent years, gardening enthusiasts throughout Japan have been privileged to witness the remarkable demonstrations of Dr. and Mrs. Kenneth Hashimoto. Dr. Hashimoto, Managing Director and Chief of Research for the Fuji Electronic Industries, has constructed special instruments which translate the electrical output of plants into modulated sounds, giving voice to a cactus. Relying on her affinity for plants, Mrs. Hashimoto looks forward to actual conversation with her cactus. Convinced that it possesses an intelligence, she is determined to teach it the Japanese alphabet.
Research conducted in the Soviet Union leads scientists to believe that plants may think. Attached to delicate electronic instruments, a cabbage plant registers annoyance to the exhaling of tobacco smoke on its leaf surfaces. A scene familiar in any kitchen takes on special importance in this experiment.
Володя, переключи задание по всем параметрам. Тамара, бери препарат. Все готовы?
Начинай.
In some mysterious way, the plant which is attached to the instrument is able to feel the mutilation of its comrade. In a more advanced experiment, technicians were asked to pass through a laboratory containing 2 living cabbage plants. One of the subjects has been instructed to destroy the plant which is not attached to the electronic instruments. Hours later, the technicians are asked to return to the scene of the crime. The evidence is clear. The remaining plant has correctly identified the assailant.
Молодец. Ты должна быть сердитой.
Since 1959, the Academy of Sciences of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics has advanced research for the application of automation and cybernetics in plant husbandry. Connected to electronic instrumentation, these plants express their wishes directly, without the need of human guidance. In agricultural centers of the future, plants will show themselves to be fully rational beings, controlling their intake of water and nutrients, and even regulating the temperature and humidity of their environment. We're just beginning to understand the language of plants. It is a difficult and fascinating road wherein a multitude of surprises awaits us. From this beginning will come a world of harmony between mankind and nature. Through the gift of human ingenuity, all things are possible. All that we need is a peaceful sky above.
In what seems like the dead of winter, beneath the protecting mantle of ice, forces from faraway galaxies and from deep in the earth are joined in the creation of new life. As the sun dies at the winter solstice, it will be reborn in the spring.
plants has blossomed into a perennial love affair. All across the land, plant shops have sprouted, and no home or office is complete without its Dracaena or Boston fern. Like a field in high summer, horticultural and garden clubs are thriving. The National Onion Association of East Lansing, Michigan, the American Gourd Society of Mount Gilead, Ohio, Bonsai Club International of Menlo Park, California, North American Gladiolus Council, the Indoor Light Gardening Society of Bay Village, Ohio, the Society for Siberian Irises of South Harpswell, Maine, and the Delphinium Society of Minneapolis, Minnesota. Each society produced a publication. The Gesnerian St. Paulian News, the New England Wildflower Notes, the Gourd, the Gloxinian, the Herbalist, the Seed Pod, the Begonian, the Medianite, the Red Blooming Iris Recorder, and the Spuria News. As the rapture spread, plant lovers could order a pepper plant direct from Venezuela, a candlestick plant from the West Indies, a Jacob's ladder from Malaysia, and from China, a strawberry begonia.
Ladies and gentlemen, imagine, if you will, a future in which we actually exchange information with those beautiful sentinels that surround our lives. Imagine receiving from plants, locked in their own dimension of time and space, a view of our own chaotic world. We see them as static, unmoving objects, and to them, perhaps... a hopelessly mechanical rush of pointless activity. Unimaginable. But in fact, we are a flurry of the absurd. We might be more aware of the responsibility that we have to our earth. Responsibility for the food we eat and the air we breathe, given to us by the plants. We are the absurd appendages of an ongoing nature, and nothing more. The plants alone prepared the earth for all life. For what have we prepared it?
I love my flowers so much that the reflection of my love comes back from the flowers. They produce the best they can ever.
I know that when I'm really happy, it shows in my plants. Like, I can really see that. I'll just walk around the house and all the plants are just shining and bright and growing and healthy. And if I'm not really happy, it's just like that shows in the plants too.
I understand that plants respond to music. So, how do you like that?
Look at this, 1st of November, picking tomatoes.
When they bloom, they smell the house all over with gardenia smell. It's fantastic. And it's by a window, so like the smell just blows all through the house.
And not to forget the persimmons.
You don't have to look around or ask yourself if she is there. 'Cause the fragrance of love says high with every breath of air. Oh, 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 my love is outside my window. Now first to get water, so her love can grow. Oh, 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 my love smiles to me each morning, says she'll never leave me, and I know it's so.
I think a lot of people tend to be like a Jewish mother and, you know, give a lot of food or water to the plants.
I think that it's true for anything. Rock, you can communicate with rocks. People, I mean, they call people like that crazy.
You'll often hear her name describing another's pretty name. But if ever there was choice, my power would be the pretty name.
Talk to him with words all the time. It's like just plants are really hip to what you're doing and who you are, what's happening.
I don't think they understand English.
This is jalapeno pepper speaks Spanish.
Yeah, I even love them sometimes. Pick them up. I never mean to them though. Like some people tell me they beat them and stuff like that, but I never do that. I've always loved them at all times because they understand, you know.
I know that maybe 75% of the Earth's landmass is vegetation. That is the natural world. Green, trees, plants, flowers, weeds, wild things growing all over the place. You sometimes lose track of that when you live in the city. You think that's the whole world. But from my plants, I get the constant reminder, hey, we're the real world, that's not.
In the heart of Africa, on the southwestern edge of the Sahara, lives a nation of peasant warriors who call themselves the Dogon. For centuries, they have remained fiercely independent, guarding their villages and fields against intrusion from the outside world. Living in widely scattered villages in a turbulent landscape of sandstone, between huge escarpments and inaccessible cliffs, the Dogon cling to a strong religious identity, with concepts of nature and the universe that are unique among the so-called primitive peoples of Africa. These beliefs, interwoven in a tapestry of complex symbols and legends, are known only to a handful of tribal elders. The Temple of Aru is the repository of Dogon religious knowledge. Within its adobe walls are hidden countless objects of great spiritual importance to the tribe. But the essential element of the shrine is human. With no written language, the sacred knowledge of the Dogon lives in the memory of one man, the Ogan of Aru. Approached by the elders of the village, the Ogan alone can direct the course of their rituals. He alone remembers the sacred rites of the Sigi. The Sigi ritual, held only at 50-year intervals, celebrates the movements of the sacred star. It is the most important event in the Dogon world. In preparation for the ritual, a tribal artist begins an elaborate map of the universe. The words of the Ogan are translated into an astonishingly accurate view of the heavens. The planets of our solar system are shown in their proper orbits around the Sun. The rings of Saturn and the moons of Jupiter, invisible to the naked eye, are described in accurate detail. But most remarkable is their knowledge of a distant star called by them Potolo. Named for a seed, Potolo orbits the star Sirius in the constellation Canis Major. Dogon, the star Potolo is the eye of the world, a germinating seed from which they receive all knowledge. Each 50 years, throughout all the villages of the tribe, the Dogon pay tribute to Potolo in a ceremony of the Sigi, illustrating in dance the ellipse of its orbit around Sirius. Half a world away, astronomer Charles Alcock of the California Institute of Technology, with Thomas Bellows, a computer programmer, searched for scientific truth in the Dogon legend. Astronomers now know that Sirius does, in fact, have a small companion star invisible to the naked eye. The coordinates from these observations will be fed into a computer to determine the size, weight, and precise orbit of the sacred star. The computer now confirms what the Dogon have known for centuries. A small, incredibly dense star makes an orbit around Sirius every 50 Earth years. In a sacred cave, the elder Amandingi explains the significance of Potolo to initiates of the Sigi ritual. Potolo is invisible to the eye, but not to the spirit. Thus, when men perceive Potolo, they are spiritually renewed. The star is heavier than iron or any earthly substance. To them, it is the creator being, and it is heavy with the life of all worlds. Potolo is the germinating seed sending out its shoots that are the creation of all life on Earth and all life throughout the universe.
After a lot of consideration, I can think of no way that a primitive African tribe such as the Dogon, without any sophisticated astronomical equipment whatsoever, can discover by themselves that Sirius has a companion star which is invisible to the naked eye.
Amandingi's words to the initiates of the Sigi ritual have the ring of truth. With insight, the Dogon have probed the mechanism of the universe. They know what science tells us, that the seed and the star are the self-same substance, elements of a single universal consciousness. For 6 years, L. George Lawrence, a Silesian-born electronics engineer, has used an abandoned prospector's cave in the California desert as a base of operations for research in a new science called biocommunications. His purpose in choosing such a remote location was to eliminate man-made electronic interference during a series of remarkable experiments.
I started my work on plans in 1962 while I was an engineer in the aerospace industry. And at that time, it was one of our goals to develop jam-proof missile components. Now, after much experimentation, my attention turned to living plant material, in particular to plant leaves. Plant leaves are able to react to gravitational changes, to temperature changes, to electrostatic fields, and so on, simultaneously. Now, a man-made sensing device cannot do this. So, as time went on, and I experimented with these various plants and plant leaves, I noted very unusual reaction patterns. Now, at that time, I thought that my equipment was defective. It did not occur to me that I was witnessing a profound consciousness in these living plants. But I was an engineer, a nuts and bolts man. I needed to perfect a machine-based system just for the specific purpose of finding out the truth about consciousness in plants. And to my extreme surprise, it worked. There is indeed a consciousness in the plant kingdom.
Lawrence's latest equipment differs significantly from that of other researchers. It dispenses with the necessity to use electrodes directly attached to the subject. He has found through experiments that living vegetable tissue perceives signals with greater sensitivity than electronic sensors. These tiny mustard seeds, removed from a nutrient bath at the point of germination, will act as antennae to receive distant biological radiation. Emerging into the desert night, Lawrence prepares his equipment. At the end of a Faraday tube, he inserts the seeds which will monitor the signals. A rotating beam splitter will eliminate radio interference. Consulting a star map, Lawrence searches for the constellation Ursa Major, the Great Bear. It is to celestial coordinates 10 hours, 40 minutes by 56 degrees that he will direct his instrument. Lawrence scans the heavens, waiting for the seeds to receive a distant signal. After analysis of his experiment by the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C., L. George Lawrence believes the living plant tissue in his instrument is receiving a message from outer space.
Plants communicate with each other. It would also appear, in our case, that we have actually eavesdropped on a communication that has gone on for millions and millions of years. And by some freak accident, by simply allowing a sensing instrument to remain pointed at the sky, we were able to intercept what seems to be a universal truth.
In the words of Amandingi, the star is the germinating seed, sending out its shoots that are the creation of all life on Earth and of all life throughout the universe.
In the actions of the plants that I perceived a prevailing unity that is within all things. The mote that quivers in ripples of light, the teeming life upon the earth, and the radiant suns that shine above us.
From a droplet to the Milky Way, from subatomic to galactic, the germinating force of seeds and stars molds and remolds in metamorphic rounds. Upon this planet, plants have engendered all that is colorful and tasteful, that makes you feel and dream.
Asters to zinnias, sun-reflecting, give multicolored spectra, shading from violet to cherry, through fuchsia, iris, orange, indigo, and rose.
It is they, the plants, that give us flavors. Raspberry to cocoa, sassafras to coffee, and vanilla. Plants give the bite in pepper, nutmeg, cinnamon, and curry.
Plants waft the fragrance of tuberose, of jasmine and gardenia, of garlic, leek, and scallion.
Plants give the feel of cordage, sailcloth, surplices, and shrouds.
And dreamland without end they give, from hop and vine, from cannabis and coca, and in extremis, the relief of laudanum, and the final sleep of Morpheus.
For they are life, the orgone green in leaves. They live in you, and when you die, your flesh will live again in other plants. And from those plants more men and women fair, and on and on. Aware of love, hate, and the whole spectrum of human emotions, are not plants the perfect monitors of Earth? Observers of infinite patience, enduring for millennia amidst the chaos of the human condition? Spread across the face of the land, what message do they pass from this to other worlds?
The eyes that view these endless scenes are numberless as stars. The viewer, one.
Crystalline, kaleidoscopic, life snakes its way through the alchemy of mortal coils, creating and destroying form.
Understood for the first time that ancient message proclaimed by my ancestors on the banks of the Ganges 30 centuries ago. They who see but one in all the teeming manifoldness of the universe, unto them alone belongs eternal truth, unto no one else.